computer. Okay, here we are, folks, and thank you very, very much for joining us today. And we have a very exciting presentation. I think you're going to learn a lot. You're going to be really enthused about the knowledge that you're going to gain today, because all of us have to work with other people. And the title of this particular topic is how to form effective, successful groups to get things done in your community, in your business, or just about anywhere. All of us, all the time, are working with other people. And it is a skill that you can learn. And that's what Kevin Innes, our guest, is here to do today, is show you and explain to you how to create groups simply and quickly and get things done and get your goals achieved of whatever your group is doing. So it's a very, very exciting topic, and Kevin is probably the best person I know of in North America to do this, because Kevin has worked on this all over North America. He and I worked together creating groups in Fairfield, Iowa, about 6 or 7 years ago, I think it was. And we had some great success there, and I know that he is probably the best person that I've ever heard of in doing this. So I feel like all of us are very fortunate here to have Kevin join us today. So I'm going to ask Kevin to tell us a little bit about his background and how he got into this, and then we'll proceed from there. Okay, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Clyde. Yes, back in 1975, a friend of mine strongly encouraged me to go to a 2-week intensive training with a Quaker nonviolent action group called a Movement for a New Society, and was all on how to create consensus decisions through a group facilitation process that they've been using for many years and had been fine-tuning. So this was a very new experience for me, and I just loved how we could address very tense issues amongst us, topics of the day, and come up with a agreeable decision. Shortly after that, I went up the eastern states and was training people in meeting process skills during the Vietnam War. People were getting burned out, long meetings. They were surprised how effective and fun the meetings were when there was a structure in place that respected diverse opinions and diverse communication styles. Since then, I have trained people in Europe and the States and Canada, and I enjoy doing this. And the people who come to these meetings also enjoy how much they can get done within a short period of time.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And I've seen you do it. And so that just, triples and quadruples everything I just said earlier. There isn't a better person in the world that I can think of that to teach us these skills that all of us need. So let's get started. Why don't you go? Well, one thing I did want to mention is that in early America, de Tocqueville talked about this in his book, Democracy in America. Some of you may have heard of that incredible book that he did, but he studied in the colonies how people did things in America and what was unique about how people did things, and just the success and the amazing success and prosperity and everything of the states, and the way they were growing, and how people from all over the world wanted to come to America, even in the early 1800s, and enjoy that prosperity and that opportunity to excel and be successful and accomplish their goals. And one of the things that he said in his book was the thing that was most amazing, that stood out among everything else in terms of their success, was their ability to create associations. And he talked a lot about it in his book. And basically what he said was that no matter what it was, whether, let's say, they wanted to build a school, or they wanted to build a church, or they wanted to figure out how to deal with problems with alcoholism in the community, whatever it was, they would form a group. They didn't ask the government to do anything. They didn't ask anybody else. They would just get together, form a group, and they'd figure out how to solve the problem, and they'd solve it. I mean, everything from building a church, building a building, to sending people off on missionaries to China. They would just do it, and they would figure out how to raise the money or get the materials that were together for building, whatever it was. Amazing skill. And Tocqueville said that of all of his travels in the world, Europe, England, America, that it was unique. Americans were unique in this ability. And he felt that the art of creating associations was the most important thing for having a successful society, a truly successful, prosperous society. So what we're going to be talking about now, what Kevin is going to teach us to do, is something that has way more ramifications than just our own lives. It really could affect our whole country, our whole society, our whole world. So anyway, I'll let Kevin start telling you the steps for being successful and creating very successful groups.
Well, I learned this from the Quakers, and the Quakers were among the early settlers to the United States. And I have a hunch that their systems that they developed were very much taken to heart by many of the early settlers, considering the success that the Quakers had when they first moved to the country, with
Right.
nothing, just their religion and their skills and their ability to work together as a community.
Exactly.
So this is a process of a facilitated meeting where that has a number of important values.
Mhm.
In other words, this is directly from a quote from the Facilitator's Guide to Participatory Decision Making, an excellent resource material each one of you should get as soon as possible and start looking into it.
Could you repeat that again, just so people can write it down if they want to? What's it called again?
Facilitator's Guide to Participatory Decision Making.
Okay.
The big guide. So it starts with a deep belief in the wisdom and creativity of people, a search for synergy and overlapping goals, the ability to listen openly and actively, a working knowledge of group dynamics, a deep belief in the inherent power of groups and teams, a respect for individuals and their points of view, patience, and a high tolerance for ambiguity.
Right.
To let a decision evolve and gel, strong interpersonal and collaborative problem solving skills, an
Right.
understanding of thinking processes, and a flexible versus a lockstep approach to resolving issues and making decisions. And you've seen this firsthand in
Yeah.
some of the workings that I did in Fairview when we were working together.
Right.
And if the inclination is for people to try to find a solution as soon as possible, but that's not always the quick solution is not necessarily the best and most creative and powerful one. So it needs to allow for the brainstorming to take place, the ambiguity, and then gradually bring those ideas and have them coalesce. And when there's an attitude of each person there that we are striving to find common ground, so important. So each of you who are taking this class, if you can get some paper and a pen, and if you don't already have it, or you can look back over this and start writing a few very important structural things to do before, right from the very beginning. If I'll just start right into this.
Can I ask one question before we get started?
Yes.
When you're doing this, is there a particular size of group that you recommend that people stay limited to, like maybe no more than 8 people? Or because as you and I both experienced, the larger the group gets, the more difficult it is to come to a consensus. So what would you say is a good size group to get things done?
Well, the idea of this facilitated meeting is to bring together lots of different ideas and find common ground.
Right.
So when you have too few people, maybe not and too few of the similar type of points of view, then there's not as many creative inputs.
Okay.
If you have too many people, it's harder to find consensus. So in the work of Robert Podolsky and his mentor,
John David Garcia.
John David Garcia, 8 people is a very optimal number of folks. Of course, you work with what you've got, maybe 6, maybe 10,
Right.
but strive to have about 8 people in your group. And if it gets beyond 10 or 12, you need to break up. You need to have more structure. You need to have more opportunity for small group discussion with a spokesperson who comes back and talks to the whole group, or separate meetings, and then representatives come to the main meeting, because it's so difficult to come to a consensus when there's lots of different points of view and just the time involved.
Right.
When I do meetings, I only do them for an hour. And then if there has to be longer than an hour, we can negotiate for more time, take a break, come back to it. Longer than that, people start to get burned out.
Right.
So first thing is to have an agenda. Okay. Each person who's going to be parties to the meeting has an agenda, items that will be talked about, and everyone else knows what those items are. All right. You have a meeting time and it starts on time. Got it, start on time. Otherwise, people will start to dribble in, and it's not respectful for others if the meeting doesn't start on time with all those members who want to be participants to the decision.
I've noticed that. It's really, really important. Yep.
Yes. And then at the very beginning, okay, one person is assigned to be the facilitator who has understanding of those concepts I read out to you before.
Right.
And that the facilitator does not participate in the discussion. They are to help the flow move amongst others, to draw ideas out of people if they haven't been speaking, to seek clarification, those sort of things. So there's a facilitator, various roles here. So a facilitator, another person is a timekeeper. Why a timekeeper? Because when you have made your agenda and have decided which things you want to talk about, which all is put up on the board or a big piece of paper so everyone can see it, then you assign a certain amount of time for each item. And you may find that your agenda is too ambitious, so maybe it has to be, some items are not as important for that decision, have to be assigned to another meeting.
Okay.
And then you have someone called a vibes watcher, especially that's somebody who has a sense of,
I remember this.
yes, those who are watching, if someone has been meaning to say something, but they feel they have not been assertive to speak up, and the facilitator doesn't catch this, then they may say, facilitator, seems as though this person would like to say something, and to help draw them in. Or if there is a tension going on between a couple of members or a few members, they can address that issue because maybe the facilitator is missing that. And then time could be taken out to address that tension, or a small group made to speak about an emotional topic that has come up. And and then there's also a note taker, who's going to make notes of the meeting, who was present when it started, and what the agenda was, and that those notes and the decisions made, and that would go out to each person after the meeting. And these roles can be, it's good when they change from meeting to meeting, so each person has a chance to fill that role and know what it's like to be in that position. Okay. Very important. And then you start your meeting with starting at the top, and it's good to have some opening method to bring everybody together. Just a sharing of where people are at very briefly, just a couple of words, or a less than a minute, and share where people are at. And then you start your meeting, and near the end of the meeting, you have a summary of what has happened, the decisions made, when your next meeting is going to occur, and comments as to how the meeting went. Was there some things to be improved, which things you'd like, and then finish with some kind of closing thing of how people felt or what they are feeling good about. And
Is that all being taken, is the note taker still taking notes during that process?
yes, also the feedback, yes, which is good for the facilitator, see how the different people who fulfilled those roles felt as far as what they did. And yeah, and then so if you have this structure in place, just with the structure, makes the meeting flow so much better.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
structure is critical. So
Mhm.
it's sort of like, because you and I are both kind of have always leaned toward more libertarian philosophy, and trying to get things done in a voluntary way, without
Mhm.
the need for coercive institutions to get involved
Mhm.
and tell us how to live our lives. And so, if we can really learn these skills, and I mean, it's all non-coercive. It's just people learning how to get together and get things done without having to ask other people or other institutions to get involved and tell us
Right.
what to do. So it's a really way of maintaining our freedom, I think.
Yes.
And
And so it's important for all those people who have come together to come up with some basic principles for their group.
right.
What is your mission statement? Why are you meeting? And to come to some agreement that is clear, concise, that you will continue as you make your decisions to come back to those principles, which have to be ethical in the goals
Yes.
and in the means to get there.
Yeah. The ethics.
It's to benefit each person in the group
Right.
to the detriment of none. Or it could be beneficial to just one person in the group to the detriment of none. And that would also be ethical.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes back to the book called Flourish from Robert Podolsky, who mentions how some of the fundamentals for making groups work very successfully.
Yes, and he also combined that with a couple of principles. One was the ethical principle that he got from John David Garcia, that basically an ethical act would be an act where your intention was to increase the creativity of at least one person, including yourself, without doing harm or coercing anyone else. In other words, increasing creativity is always your intention of at least one other person with no damage to anyone else. And that, if everyone had that particular concept in mind, it would make everything work. I mean, that is a basic fundamental principle, an ethical principle that if everyone in the group can accept that, it's really, really cool, and it works. And in addition to being creativity, he talked about the
Logical equivalence.
logical equivalence of creativity, which was love. Creativity, if you increase creativity, you're also increasing love. You can't have more love without having more creativity. In other words, you increase one, you increase the other. And then the third one was truth, right? And then I believe the fourth one was awareness. So, awareness, truth, love, and creativity are all increased when your ethical intention of every action is to increase the creativity of at least one other person, including yourself, without harming anyone else. So that's
Right.
kind of like a basic fundamental thing that Robert Podolsky taught, and that we did in our groups as well. And that seemed to be to make things flow a little bit easier, because everybody's sort of in that vein of increasing the evolution and the goodwill and the love and creativity of everybody in the group.
Yes. as you make decisions with that as the background motivator and concept, then the decisions that you make will be very powerful, and it streamline the decision making process as far as choosing which brainstorming ideas that you come up with may not be fulfilling that those ethics.
Yeah, and it's all about creativity anyway. What we're trying
Mhm.
to do is we're trying to increase our creativity so that we can have success in our group's actions. So if we write that right in, it's the ethical principle, increasing creativity of at least one other person, including ourselves, then it's kind of it's extremely powerful. Extreme,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we've seen that when people agree on that ethical principle, that in alone creates a power in the group, which is going to give you more success in your decisions.
Mhm.
Other thing that we did, if you remember, and I want you to comment on this, is we also try to use the principle of unanimity. In other
Yes.
words, that you really, if at all possible, you try to make sure that your decisions, everyone in the group buys into that decision.
Now, in these times, there are a lot of tensions and varying weightedness of which principles to prefer over others,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you may, and there is a very, it's very important to vet the people who are going to come into your group first to find out where their principles are. But
Mhm.
there may be an instance where there's someone who just has a really hard time coming to anonymity.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of ways of approaching that. You can have something called range voting, or to say, okay, from 1 to 5, how where are you? 5 being I really want to go with this. 1, I'm absolutely against it. Where, or are you about a 3 as far as your level of agreement? What would it take for you to be a 5? And then to give that person a time to express themselves, what type of ideas they have that would be agreeable to them. Now, if there's someone who has a really hard time, or they're very different in how they view certain things, there's something called consensus -1. Okay, so
Right.
you've talked
Right.
it very in
Yeah.
depth with everyone, and so time is given to that one person
Mhm.
to go around to each member of the group, preferably a small one, like 8 people or 10 or something, and then to talk within a certain period of time, talk to each one individually,
Mhm.
and then to try to express their point of view, because sometimes there's not enough time at a 1 hour meeting to be able to do this. So they talk to them, and then they have another meeting, and if they've been able to clarify their point of view in ways that the other persons are in agreement, then they can have another decision. And if that person is still the odd person out, well, it'll be consensus -1. And they can choose to stay with the group or not.
Right.
That's the way it is. Sometimes there are people that, certain ethical issues just are very strong with folks, and then they can form their own group. I mean, what to do, right?
Exactly. And that does happen. And that's
Yeah.
what happened in some of our groups. And but for the most part, if you stick with it, with the idea of unanimity up front, when you do
Hmm.
when you do come to a decision, there's no minority that's upset. In other words, that group it's like a laser. The power of the group is more like a laser. It's focused energy, focused light, and it's really powerful.
It's exciting, and the
It's
synergy
very
is just
exciting.
incredible.
The first time I experienced that was when we were helping Sheriff Richard Mack create the first ever constitutional sheriff convention in 2012. And we had a group of about 9 people. The name of our group was Free America Now. And that was just when I had met Bob Podolsky, and he was, tutoring me on this. And I asked the group one night, I said, I want to talk to you about this unanimity principle. And I explained it, and I said, do you want to do this? And everybody said, yeah. And you know what we found? It took longer to get to decisions. It did take longer because we weren't taking a vote and then having that minority. It would take longer. But when we did, it was extremely powerful. And that group in about 8 weeks over Thanksgiving and Christmas vacation created the first ever constitutional sheriff convention. We got 113 sheriffs there. We raised all the money for all the sheriffs to fly to Nevada. We raised the money for their room and board, but got all the speakers, created a phenomenal event. And, we did it in a record, unbelievable short amount of time. And it was because that power was focused. So anyway,
get back to what I mentioned. Yeah, what I mentioned before, a patience and a high tolerance for ambiguity.
Exactly.
That this decision will come together because each one there has got the same fundamental reason,
for being
powerful reason to be together and find a solution. Let's just keep working at it. Let's get creative. And if it's, sometimes you have to, even with a group of 8, maybe have to group into groups of 3, and 2 in order to get each person enough time to discuss and gel their ideas. And sometimes it takes a while to really come to where am I at with this?
So let me ask you, I think we've covered the basics, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do now? I mean, you now are teaching this, right? This is your basically what you do for a living, right? Is to teach people these techniques. And what's your organization called? How can people, if people want to get more information on this, and for you and work with you, how would they do that? How would they go about that?
Well, the best way right now would be for people to contact me through something called Trade Forward. Tradeforward.ca.
Trade, TRADE?
Tradeforward.ca.
.ca. Okay, that's your website.
And that is a barter network that I'm starting, where people are working together to support one another in ways that doesn't need corporations or government to be involved.
Okay.
And you can send an email there to me. I use my yoga name for that, Krishna Deva. Krishna Deva at tradeforward.ca.
Okay.
And they can contact me directly through the website, or just Krishna Deva at tradeforward.ca.
Okay. So Krishna Deva at tradeforward.ca, and that's the barter network that you have. And then also, what was that name of that book again? Let's write that, make sure everybody got that you think.
Facilitator's Guide.
Facilitator's Guide
to Participatory Decision Making.
Decision making. Okay, I hope everybody got that down and you have notes on that. But this is.
And
I remember.
And I would be happy to do more trainings with people through Zoom, and which would be in person and on Zoom, because there are a number of. An important part of being a facilitator is to have that confidence and to find your center despite the many different views being expressed and potentially the impatience of others to try to rush to a decision. So how you are with your calmness helps to others to be calm and patient as well. And it takes practice.
It will teach us all to be more calm and patient in our dealings with everyone. But the payoff is everyone gets to achieve the goals that they want to achieve. And whatever those goals are going to increase your prosperity, increase your health, increase, and improve your whole community and your families and everything else.
And that sense of togetherness with others. Wow, we've got a group that we're solid together in our principles and we want to do something, right? Let's just keep working at it till we find what that is. Exactly. And and then each people person in that group, they in turn can have their own spin-off group for particular facets of the project that they have in mind, using the same principles, and then report back to their, and bring those ideas back to their main group.
Exactly. And I think we should mention that, you know, Bob Podolsky has taught us a lot in his book, Flourish. If people are interested, his book, Flourish by Bob Podolsky, you can look that up. I think it's available online. Yeah, Bob contributed a lot to this. He studied it with John David Garcia, and it's an amazing. His book is the Creative Transformation. Another website you might want to write down is flourishfairfield.org. That's flourishfairfield.org. And on that website, I have a video of Bob Podolsky, Foster Gamble, me, and then a bunch of links like to Creative Transformation. The book Creative Transformation is there. If you read the foreword, it's about 45 pages long. You will have a real good education in everything we're talking about here. And so anyway, I think that's been a great meeting and fantastic information, fantastic knowledge that everybody can benefit from. So I really appreciate you taking your time, Kevin.
Thank you very much for it, Clyde.
Yeah.
This is I enjoyed this.
And if you get down to Florida, I still have the bike that you rode when you were in Fairfield. I still have that bike. It's down here in Florida waiting for you so you can cruise around up and down A1A on the beach.
Yeah, it'd be a good time to be in Florida. It's rather chilly up in Canada right now.
Yeah, well, you'd love it down here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, brother. Really appreciate it very much.
All right. Thank you.
And now, thank you all for participating today. Bye-bye.